Should you sell on Amazon US or Amazon Canada? Let's go over this together. So even if you live in Canada, I just want to let you know that the US market is 10 times bigger than the Canadian market. Now, a lot of people think that just because they live in Canada or they live outside the US, then they have to sell in their local country, which is not true. There are over 130 countries that are allowed to create seller accounts on Amazon.com, which is Amazon US market. Now, the Amazon US market is the biggest online marketplace in the world, and in my opinion, no matter where you live, you should start in the US market because it has the biggest revenue potential. Now, even if you are selling on Amazon.com and not Amazon Canada or wherever it is that you decide to sell, the main point is that the inventory does not have to go to your home, it doesn't have to pass through you. So let's say, for example, if you are living in Europe, it's not like you have to ship your inventory from China to Europe and then ship it to the Amazon warehouse in the US. It just goes straight there. So it really doesn't matter where you live or where you are located. There are a few things that do matter when you live in Canada and want to sell in the US. There are a few tools that you might not have access to as a Canadian business that you would otherwise as a US business. We can go over that later on in the video, but right now I just want to show you a comparison in two products that are basically the exact same, and their revenue on the Canadian marketplace and the revenue on the US marketplace. Alright, so here you have these dog boots, these waterproof dog boots, which would actually be a product that would do really well in Canada because of the weather. You can tell here, this is the Canadian marketplace. They're being sold for 40 Canadian dollars and they're making only $1,200 every month. So these are these dog boots right here. And then let's take a look at them on the US market. So this is the same exact listing on the US market, and let's pull up Helium 10 to see how much they are making. Alright, so here they are on the US market and they are making $380,000 every month. So this is what I mean. This is definitely way more than 10 times the revenue, but the US is just such a strong marketplace that it's so much better to test out your product there first, and then if it's successful, to branch out to other marketplaces. And now what Amazon does is they are able to ship your product from the US warehouse to Canadian customers. So although your units are actually in the US warehouse, you're still able to have your product show up and be available on the Canadian market, on the Mexican marketplace. You could do it on the UAE market if that's what you wanted, and you sell in their currency and you set the price point for each marketplace yourself. So there is a lot of flexibility there. You don't need to order so many different units and ship each inventory batch to a different country, even if you want to sell in different countries through Amazon. So I just wanted to show you the difference in demand there, but there are times when you should sell in Canada rather than the US, and that is when you want to sell such a popular product, but it's too saturated in the US market, maybe not as saturated in the Canadian market. Now, this is because in the US market, as I said, it's the biggest marketplace in the world. Everybody starts off there. This is the main starting point for all sellers. So you might find that a product is very, very saturated on Amazon.com, but in Amazon Canada, those options aren't really there. The competition is not as high. You're not finding the perfect product that people are wanting, or whatever's available in the Canadian market, it has low reviews, as in low stars. So there's things that people don't like about it. There's lots of improvement points. So that would be a great way for you to step in and start your product there in the Canadian market. Now, something else to note, that any market other than the US market, so for example, like the Canadian market, PPC is going to be a lot cheaper. So PPC are the paid ads that are run on the Amazon platform itself. So whenever you see a sponsored product, when you search for something and it comes up on the first page as the first listing, and you can see next to it, it says sponsored, that product is paying to be there. So this is what PPC is. If somebody clicks on the product, then the seller pays. Usually it's around $1.50 to $2, but PPC will always be cheaper in the Canadian market, which means your advertising will be cheaper, and you're maybe able to get a bigger bang for your buck with that. But things that matter as a Canadian business, if you are selling in the US, the registration process is very easy. Everything is super smooth. Shipping to the US warehouse is like the same process as if you were a US business, but the only few things that matter is some access to, for example, funding that Amazon provides to businesses. So these features right now are only available to US businesses. So a lot of the new features that Amazon rolls out, they will always be available to US businesses, and then Canadian maybe after a year, after 6 months, or a year, depending on how successful that new feature is. So this is the advantage of having a US registered business. Now, another thing is also with trademarking your brand to get the brand registry. If you are a Canadian business, it costs a lot more than if you were a US business. So a Canadian, or actually any foreign business, it'll cost around $950 to do it through the Amazon IP Accelerator program, because you have to go through a lawyer to trademark your brand in the US. Now, rather than if you were a US business and you were doing this trademarking in the US as a US business, it would be a lot cheaper. You wouldn't actually have to go through a lawyer. You could just do it yourself, but you would just have to wait for the brand to get approved to get access to brand registry. So yeah, guys, I hope this video was helpful. I always recommend to start in the Amazon.com marketplace rather than the Canadian marketplace, and then expand later on to whatever marketplace you want, even with your units still at the US warehouse. So thank you so much for watching the video. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next week. Bye.